The People's Progressive Party Civic has swept a victory in Guyana's 2025 general and regional elections, securing another term in office. In a major political shift, We Invest in Nationhood win outpaced the long-established Partnership for National Unity APNU to take up the role of main opposition. International observers, including the European Union and the Carter Center, commended the elections as competitive and largely peaceful, though they flagged concerns about the uneven playing field created by legal gaps and weak campaign rules. This week on Sources, political analyst GHK Lall joins me to unpack the results and what they mean for the future of Guyana's democracy. Welcome to Sources. I'm your host, Svetlana Marshall. Tonight, we'll be taking a closer look at the results of the 2025 general and regional elections. To do so with me, I have political analyst, Mr. GHK Lall. Mr. Lall, welcome to Sources.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall, and it's a pleasure to be here.
How are you doing?
It's a good day.
Glad to hear.
Yes.
Amen. Now, the 2025 elections, they're over. Monday came, it went smoothly according to the election observers. The international community said voting went by smoothly. The counting process for the most part went smoothly. And so today I would like to take a look at the results. The results thus far indicate that the People's Progressive Party won the elections by a majority, while the APNU lost. And not only lost, they lost their position as the main opposition to We Invest in Nationhood. When you heard of the results, based on the declarations made within the 10 electoral districts, what were your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts were that the PPP did well. The APNU/PNC did poorly, even more poorly than I expected, and that win by any margin, by any expectation, overachieved. Because we've got to remember that win is starting from zero.
Yeah.
It's got zero base, zero votes. So there it was, in hundreds, over 100,000 votes. I think it's 109 the last time I looked. So the PPP did well, and I'm surprised at that. And I'm asking myself, well, how did you pull that one off? The PNC did extremely, extremely poorly, and this is tragic for Guyana because you've got all of that political know-how, that political depth, that of decades, that now, to me, is trapped somewhere in the political wilderness, given its outcome. On the other hand, win, brand new to the political ground, not much of a team with due respect in terms of enduring, of experience. How are they going to fare in the dogfight that is Parliament and is post-election and winner-take-all system and so on and so forth? So we're in for some interesting times here, and I hate to say this, but it certainly favors the incumbents or the victorious.
Okay. Now, what are some of the factors? We'll take a look, and I should say to the viewers, this interview is being recorded ahead of GCOM's declaration. And so you will forgive us for that part, but we thought it was important to take a closer look at the performances by the various political parties and to see where they went right, where they did good, and where they went wrong. And so before we get into that, I want to talk about the atmosphere, the political atmosphere heading into the 2025, the September 1 elections. What were some of the factors that were put into consideration heading into that September 1 elections? generally speaking, and we'll look at the PPP, its performance, and move through to the last party.
I think that's a pretty profound question in terms that it covers a whole lot of territory. And what do we want to use as our time frame? So I will go back, with your permission, to last year.
Okay.
That's my arbitrary starting point.
No problem.
And there was the sense that the PPP was on the ropes. The sense that the PPP was on. This is long before WIN.
Yes.
So it was really a two-man, if I may say, two-party tussle. And that although the PNC was not really ever in the ascendancy, that it could hold its own.
Yeah.
The problem was, that was the bright side. The not so good side, and we've got to be frank here, or else we are useless to our viewers. We're doing them a disservice, the citizens of this country. Whenever I mention the name of the leader of the opposition, who's under such tremendous fire right now, post-election performance, unofficial of course, I don't want to begin to tell you how people reacted. And these were not PPP supporters. I don't want to hear the man name. And things of that nature. And sometimes I get a good cuss into myself. Not that I was proselytizing for him, but just that the environment, his own base.
You're saying that they didn't have that confidence.
They didn't have that confidence.
He didn't have the support.
He didn't have the support. He had the diehards and the people who were impressed by him. But by and large, the rank and file, people whom I've never seen before, like I'm seeing you for the first time today, never spoken to before, and they were, he is not the one. And I'm like, this is trouble. This is trouble for the PNC. And I think that internals aside, or held in abeyance, that it showed up in the numbers. So, but I still don't expect that the numbers to be so bad for a party with the history of and the strength of the People's National Congress, now a partnership for national unity. In terms of WIN, WIN didn't come in yet, so you need to continue to hand back
so
to you.
Good, definitely. So let's talk about the performance of the People's Progressive Party. They've done exceptionally well. According to the numbers we're looking at, they're in line to get about 36 seats thereabout, doing much better than they did in 2020. What are some of the factors that influenced this performance? Was it that they had access? And I noted, I'm taking note of the Observer's report in which they said it wasn't a level playing field. Access to our oil resources, access to the media when compared to other political parties. Did it have anything to do with the Births and Death Amendment Act in 2021? What are some of the factors that would lead, or they just did well? The people were pleased with their performance. They focused a lot on infrastructural development. People saw new roads and bridges, new schools were commissioned. And I often say that the Minister of Education, and what she did, commission a number of schools. There were the grants, the cash grants, the increase in Because We Care cash grant, the issuance of cash grants to citizens 80 years and older. Do you think all of those things work in favor of the PPP, and Guyanese are generally pleased with their performance in office and thought that President Irfaan Ali deserved a second term?
That's certainly a mouthful, Ms. Marshall, and they are, to be fair, there are pluses and other extrapolations that can be made from all those things that you said, and some things that have not been said. No question that you've had 5 record-breaking budgets, $4 trillion plus, close to 4.3, 0.4 trillion, which is a lot of money. We're talking in $1 trillion here now. It's a lot of money for this country, but a common thread throughout those budgets is how much was set aside for public infrastructure, public works. And holding corruption aside for a moment, which is a bone in the throat by itself, yes, there have been these, look, we've got roads and we've got new facilities and we've got ABC. And yes, $100,000 cash grant. But you said something with which I must differ, if I may. The PPP performed exceedingly well. I think it performed well.
Okay.
Relative to the other parties. And because it's the incumbent, because it was in total control of the oil assets, the proceeds from the oil sales.
Yeah.
It really ought to have wiped the slate clean out of everybody. But, so I go back now, and this is where I start splitting the thing. And I don't think I'm being overly critical here of the People's Progressive Party. I think I'm just looking at its policies and its decisions and say, well, yes, this, we acknowledge that. Excise tax and gasoline and haulage and so forth, all good things. But throughout the last 5 years, we've had a constant refrain, and it had to do with cost of living.
Yes.
And cost of living is not a concept or a theory out there. Cost of living is here. It's in the belly. It's in the family. It's in the community. And that hurts. That hurts. And so I think when the PPP should have swept the slate, should have blown everybody out of the water on September 1st, we had this thing where touch and go and who's going to be what. And then all the other factors, the negative factors, some pre-elections came into play, and it's now what it is. So, state media. Let's look at this step by step. The EU and the International Election Observer Community came and did their list, and they said state assets abuse, state resources abuse, state media abuse, and I can testify to that personally. And the imbalance, they call it what, incumbency advantage, did not contribute to a level playing field or contributed to an even playing field. I mean, I love that. That's straight out of my heart. Now, the incumbents had advantages, and they never let go of them.
Yeah.
They leveraged them to the maximum, which showed in the numbers that they got. And because their message never stopped playing. Because they had the money, they had the tools and resources, and they just ran them down to the wire. In terms of state media, how much of an opposition voice or presence was there before elections, during the campaign, let's say between nomination day and election day? What's that, about 6 weeks or even before? And I think when you look at that territory, it was pretty barren in terms of an opposition presence and an opposition voice.
Yeah. I want to read, while you're elaborating, just before you get to that, what the EU had to say about the state media. And this is coming from a news source report based on the European Union Election Observers Mission. They said the media landscape was highly polarized. Many outlets were aligned with political actors, resulting in a disproportionate coverage in favor of the ruling party. They didn't stop there. They went on to say, and they spoke about Guyana Radio, NCN. They said the NCN devoted up to 92% of their election-related coverage to the PPPC campaign. And then they went on to reference to DPI, which is the Department of Public Information. And they spoke about the fact that campaign material publicized on the PPP page was simultaneously publicized on the DPI's page. So the EU did look at this, and they look at it in great detail. Of course, this is their preliminary report. So you're saying, as a result of the access to the media, state media, NCN and DPI and all the others, that the PPP had an extreme advantage over the opposition parties.
Well, I would prefer using my own words.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Not access, control.
Okay.
Because you can have access, but you may not have that a level of control. They had access and you had almost total control. So when you're talking about 92%, you're talking about a monopoly. I monopolize the conversation. There's no space for you to squeeze in sideways. So what is the other party, the PNC and WIN, if we're going to include WIN at this time, it's going to do with 8%.
Well, there are 6 parties to be fair,
yes,
right? PPP and then the 5 others.
Yes.
So it has to be split among the 5 others.
So you got 8% split between five others.
Yeah.
So, and forgive me, folks. I'm looking at the one major that we know, the PNC, and the new kid on the block, which is the next major, which is WIN.
Yeah.
But you're right. There are 5. There are 3 more. There are 5 altogether. And so you leave 8%, if it can be called that. What kind of message can 5 of us get with 8% of media time on state media? Now, something else that I heard from whilst you were reading, and it talks about media outlets. So I think it was a bit more expansive than state media. So you're talking about friendly private outlets and social media controlled thing. So look, in the United States, the senator, the candidate that's running for the Senate or the House of Representatives or the presidency, money talks. He can do these commercials. He or she can do these commercials. And usually, sometimes, those commercials carry the day in a close election. Here, we're talking about 92% on monopoly and almost total control of the message. So the citizens are hearing one thing over and over again. How many roads we've built, how many hospitals we've put up, how many plans we've got, and we've got plans for half-price electricity and reliable, no more blackouts and so on and so on. And we've got your back, and we've got your interests at heart. Where is the PNC voice? Where's Aubrey Norton's voice there, or Mr. Mohammed, or Miss Brooms, or Miss Amanza, Walton-Desir? There's no, they can't get in a word sideways, right? They're not even invited to the table of discussion. And so if you're going to talk about a level playing field or an uneven playing field, this is no playing field at all. It's no playing field at all. Or if it's a playing field, it's mined in the favor, it's booby-trapped in the favor of the People's Progressive Party. And how can you lose when you have that kind of advantage?
An important thing that was not addressed necessarily, but was spoken about repeatedly in the lead up to this election, and it also came out in the election observer reports, that of the list, the size of the list. Of the list, yes. The voters list. So the voters list was 750,000 plus. Guyana has a population of just about 800,000 plus. Now, we haven't seen the last census report, and so we have to go back to 2012. Do you think, because this is an argument, I guess if I speak to Mr. Norton, he would put forth that the list worked in the favor of the PPP. Do you think that's the case? Do you think that I must say that based on reports and based on observations during the course of the election, people did not complain of seeing anything irregular. The observers all said that voting went by smoothly. The election the election staff or GCOM officials on the ground working, the presiding officers, the polling day staff, they were all very professional. They were doing what they were supposed to do, and there wasn't any major complaint. So do you think that the list could have been a factor in the way the PNC would put it? Do you think that is the case?
Well, you start with a list that is 757,000 plus. And if you go back to Dr. Ashley Singh's budget presentation of this year, this year, there's a line there, 790,800 citizens of this country. There's a line there which was provided for him, I have been made to understand, by the Bureau of Statistics. So you're talking 757,000 out of 790. Something, first of all, is very, very wrong about that picture in terms of eligible voters. The second thing, that can only be to the advantage of the ruling party when the opposition party, especially the two major ones, the PNC and the AFC, at the time were beating that drum. I don't think they beat that drum enough. And I felt that had a lot to do with the result that favored the winner, the winner as we know it, the PPP.
Okay. All right. Well, the results are there. Unless they go to the court or the petition, it stands. Now, let's take a look at the APNU performance. And for those of you who may be watching and do not know, the People's National Congress reform forms a major part of APNU. Now, you spoke about Mr. Norton and the support he had leading up to these elections. What are the other factors? Do you think he did the best he could?
There are a number of components to that question, and I think it's timely, I think it's relevant, and I think it goes deep. It goes to the heart of Mr. Norton's performance. He is the leader, and it goes to the heart of the PNC, I'm sorry. First of all, there cannot be any rejection of the sense, my personal sense, my awareness, and that of stalwarts in the PNC. Although I didn't spend a lot of decades here, I grew up with some of the guys who are, we went to school together, etc., who are very, very wired. Mr. Norton was undermined within the party. Mr. Norton was undermined within his own party. And here is one piece of evidence, maybe two. How many of the stalwarts, the luminaries in the PNC, did we see out beating the bushes during the campaign trail? You've asked a question I really shouldn't be asking, being some rabbi and respond with a question. But there is the ground. If you are fighting in the competing honestly and competing comprehensively in the most crucial elections in Guyana's history, and I think it was, or it should have been, and your full court press, your veterans, your superstars, old and grizzled, are not out there, then that doesn't give me enough of a persuasive picture. Mr. Norton by himself, or we'll come to him in a minute, needed that support.
Why he wasn't given that support? Why do you believe he was undermined? What contributed to that kind of behavior?
I think those who were against him just didn't want him as the leader. They didn't see him as fit and proper.
At the detriment of the party?
Well, I have no hesitation and I have no option but to say to the detriment of the party. I would have loved to see the president, His Excellency David Granger, out there. I mean, he's not a campaigner per se, but I would love to see him out there saying, let's go get him. This is the PNC's time. This is Mr. Norton's time. and I am standing shoulder to shoulder with him, and I will go with him over the winning line. Where was he? Where was all the others that were part of his inner circle? Where were those ministers from before during the... So I see Mr. Norton, unfortunately, in the most demanding of times, being this lonely figure. This man alone. This man fighting by himself. And of course, we've got to come to him now. And unfortunately, folks, I've got to be unsparing. Mr. Norton didn't help himself.
How so?
Mr. Aubrey Norton was not the best friend of himself. He listened. He listens. He's polite. But he's already got his head wired one way. He's not... Politics, you've got to be flexible.
He wasn't flexible.
He wasn't flexible. Politics, you've got to be adjustable. Politics, you've got to be adaptable. Politics, especially given his knowledge of how the internal mechanism of his own party was working, he had to be a lot of things. He had to be a statesman. He had to be a diplomat, and I understand he has some experience in that. Mm-hmm. He had to be, well, not so much of a street fighter internally, but he had to be that inspiration that drew people. Look, we are going to win this. Look, I need you by my side. Make people feel that they're important. Make people feel that they have something to offer.
Well, I'm happy that you mentioned that, because a lot of the persons who left, for example, Amanza Walton-Desir, she left, she formed her own party, and we'll definitely speak about her performance. But she spoke about being sidelined. You had German figure from Linden, and he felt, I guess, somewhat unappreciated. Mm-hmm. He said he felt, however he felt, being a part of the PPP when he endorsed President Irfanali. You had the former mayor of Bartica, Gifford Marshall, also departing that party. And how could we forget the Region 4 chairman and vice chairman, all of whom endorsed the PPP, endorsed President Irfanali for a second term. And it must have been something that caused them to leave. Do you think that it was their own, that they simply want to leave for those who endorsed the PPP? Or is it that something Mr. Norton and his grouping did?
Well, it would be highly unfair for everything to be laid on Mr. Norton's head in terms of those departures. Let me tell you why. Who's got the money? Who's got the invitation? Who's got the open door? Who has got the smarts that if I get you, I weaken him? If I do this, if I dangle this carrot, then this is what could happen. To her credit, Miss Walton-Desir, she said, I'm leaving, but I'm on my own. Mm-hmm. This is where I'm going.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, I can't say the same for a lot of other people. So, yes, it's easy to beat up Mr. Norton now. You know, that business about success got the whole world is behind you and losing is an orphan. And all, I mean, I'm kind of extrapolating here. Losing is a lonely business, and Mr. Norton has lost. Did he try his best? I think he tried insofar as he knew, in that he's got to listen to advice. And the complaints I've gotten from overseas, plus here, is that the man listens and absorbs, but he doesn't go beyond that. He's still where he's at. And again, I go back to it's a multi-headed beast here. On the one hand, you had his rigidity. In the second, you've got ambitious people. You've got young people here who've got ambitions. And you're looking, let's look at this. You're looking at the territory and say, what are my prospects here with the PNC? Demographically, we don't know census because we don't have the census. Migration, etc. Is the demographics so even now because of migration, or is it because of Venezuelans and Commonwealth voters and overseas voters, Guyanese voters, that this thing is really the PPP's to lose, and it's not going to lose that, not an organization of that strength. Therefore, personal ambition starts to stir, right? And so you got one, Mr. Norton's uninspiring presence, two, personal ambition, and you've got all those jewels waiting on the PPP side because it controls the oil money. So we come right back to become full circle here. And so what you've got here is a confluence of personnel and a confluence of ideas and a confluence of events that all, I think, militated against Mr. Norton. They were against him.
I failed to mention Mr. James Bond's name.
Yes,
and of course, we now see that the PPP won Region 4, once PNC stronghold. Do you think that those who crossed over, people like Mr. Bond and German Figueroa, do you think that their departure influenced the results of the election? Were they, in your view, able to pull vote to say, yes, this is what we brought to the party, it's because of us? You now have control over Region 4. Well, I mean, Linden is a different story. Win won that, and we'll get to that.
Well, it's a yes and no. I think it would be wrong to say that Mr. Bond and Mr. Figueroa didn't bring any votes. But should they be credited with a substantial number of votes that made the PPP do so well in Region 4? I've got my doubts about that, because let me give you as a practical matter from the ground. I've had people working for me who are from PNC strongholds, and they will tell me, they say, me family is dead PNC. Okay, this is long before elections, right? And then I said, well, how are you doing now and thing? What's going on? And then they would tell me about the older folks in moving, they're there. But this cousin and that neighborhood best friend, they get house lot and they get job.
Road projects.
And they get contract. And I'm like, well, how you can beat that? I wasn't telling them that, but I'm telling the audience here now. And I was thinking that and there was a lot of that. I remember a couple of weeks ago, before the election, Courtney Crummy Wing's mom came by my home. We hadn't met for a couple of years. We met immediately in the aftermath of his death, and so we had a long chat. And she said, "You know, I bid in for this and I bid in for that, and I ain't getting nowhere." So one day I'm going Freedom House, and she said, "Well, y'all treating black people so bad." I said, "You said what? In the people place?" She said, "Yes, I did that." She said, "Mr. Lall is the reality." So you have the people like her who ain't getting nothing. And you got the other people who decided, well, listen, we know what we got to do. It's a matter of survival. So I think it's more of that and the chain reaction of that, me talking to you and you talking to Joe and Joe talking to somebody else, than Mr. Bond and Mr. whomever else and Miss whomever else, doing so well for the PPP, right? That's my take.
The other thing is, and the Vice President, Barry Jagdeo, spoke about this. He said that the APNU underestimated Win. Do you think that was the case? The People's Progressive Party, once they realized that Azruddin Mohammed was going to contest the elections, they got into gear and they started making their position known that he, in their words, he was a criminal. Of course, we know he has been sanctioned by the US. He was in 2024 and continues to be a US sanctioned person. But they felt, and Mr. Jagdeo reiterated this just recently, that the PNC didn't come out and condemn him and, in a sense, sat on the fence And when it was too late, then they probably said, you know what, don't worry with the Blue Party. You think that was the case?
Let me say this. Everybody underestimated Win, including myself. And I think that Mr. Jagdeo or Dr. Jagdeo, he did too. So we can all make speeches now, right, about who should do what. Before I go forward, I should make something very, very clear. You may or may not know I was chair of the Gold Board for 3 years. I have never met Mr. Mohammed Jr. I've never spoken to him. I've never had any dealings with him. I've dealt with the father. That's always over there at the office. Now, having said that, when he came on, I'm like, where's this going to lead? This is a new setup here. And that's before things warm up about Jaguar and all that business, right? I said, is this guy for real? Yeah, but everywhere he goes, you know, he brings out people. And of course, in the meantime, they're waiting for him. Letta Kenny and Bell, Lima Sands and Bell something. I'm like, he's troubling the PPP. He's a source of concern for the PPP. So for Dr. Jagdeo now to come and say the PNC didn't give the man enough attention and come down hard on him. So I personally thought that 2 to 3 seats at a maximum was about as well as he was going to do. Mm-hmm. Later on, as we got into the heart of the election campaign, the indigenous communities, various Georgetown community, different regions, like this guy now, he's getting close to 7, 8. So I have quadrupled my estimate of his elections prospects, and that is at the very, very optimistic end, right? In the best case scenario. Here, there's the guy got what, 19 seats or something like that at last count?
We'll wait on GCOM for the official thing, but he has done well and to control the opposition in the House. What are some of the factors that you think may have led persons to gravitate to him? I mean, he has been sanctioned by the US, and this is something that was repeatedly said by the government. They reminded Guyanese almost every day that he's a sanctioned individual. In the words of the vice president, he's a criminal. He has been accused of, on the declaration of gold, tax evasion. He now faces charges in the Georgetown Magistrates Court. But that was not enough to sway the public. Why so?
Up to this morning, I opened the paper, and there was our beloved Vice President, Dr. Jagdeo, you know, carrying on about, you know, he prefers to work with APNU, as I mentioned earlier. And then he went on to this long descent about Mr. Mohammed and Venezuela and whatever. Good. Here's the story. I've said this before and I'll say it again. My assessment of the Win appeal, the Mohammed appeal, is that people are sick and tired. They're disgusted and fatigued about the PPP and the PNC. And it showed. And it showed. And that is why Jagdeo is jumping on the P and saying he prefers to do business with the PNC, because he already gone to 2030. Because he's already gone he's done with this one. He's gone at 5 years ahead and say, hey, this guy here got what? Best I take bundle with PNC, whoever it is, right? So he's looking to neutralize him from now. If he can't do so, you know, with this sanction and business and whatever, and the public relations. Now, Guyanese heard, we are living in social media. This banner is a gangster. My words, right? That's alleged. Oh, he's this and he's that, and none of it good. And they said, we don't care. We really don't care, because what you represent for we? What have you done for me? Not lately. What have you done for me throughout the last 5 years? They say, well, we have some roads somewhere. Man, I'm still hungry. The roads that you built, that you had told us that we are going to be able, that we'll get produce to the marketplace quicker and more efficiently and cheaper, and I'll be able to go and get there. I ain't got money, so I'm going to buy. I want to use the road, right? So you've got that part. So you come back now and say, you gave me a cash grant. You're telling me about all these things you were doing. Now for the first time you were talking about cost of living. How you think I did living? That is what those crowds that are gravitating towards Mr. Mohammed. If you notice, it's not, with due respect to our fellow citizens, it's not a middle class citizens component of the citizenship of Guyana. It's more or less the people, the have-nots. I call them the have-nots. The people who are struggling to put bread on the table. The people who are struggling to buy a little flip-flop for their children, you know, to make it through to these next couple of months or something. The people who can't go to the private pharmacies and buy medicines when the Georgetown Public Hospital, for all of its improvements, and it has improved, the pharmacy doesn't have what I particularly need. So you've got these people here reacting and say, it's time I try something different.
Was the Mohammed's ability to deliver? Because even before he indicated that he was going to contest these elections, he was offering support to the regular man in the street. So those vulnerable communities, providing homes to citizens, persons who were victims of fire. They had the homes destroyed by fire. They were living in poor conditions, dilapidated homes. He provided transportation to some drivers. I recall that was one of the first things I recall him doing, buying a fleet of vehicles for some persons to do taxi, gifting them those vehicles. Do you think it was his ability to say, as against the PNC, they say, well, we will do this for you. But he was able to say, this is what I'm doing now for you. Do you think that is what may have influence also?
Well, no question about it, because you are saying, you are the PNC or I am, I will do this for you. He said, I have done this for you.
Yeah.
Right? I have done this for you. And this is a standard, this is a baseline from which I will do so much more for you, where you would invest your confidence in me and put me in a position where I can do things for you. In other words, and here it is that the man is saying, he's saying it without saying, I don't need the money. So I don't have to touch the money personally. So that money really, instead of it being divided among my comrades, is going to come to you. And the other parties can't say that, neither the PNC nor the PPP, especially the PPP, given it's been in charge of the money. Now, let me sneak in something here. And don't hold me to this. He has been officially a politician for a couple of months, right?
Couple of months.
But the man was laying the groundwork. Could I not say, and I am saying it, he was somewhere at the back of his head or in the front of in his vision, he was laying the groundwork for a political career, long before sanctions, and long before breaking off with before the friendships went sour.
Yes, because his father, Mr. Nasser Mohammed, was a local government candidate for the PPP in the last local government election. So they worked closely, and they said openly that they supported the People's Progressive Party. Now, what would Parliament look like with when in the middle of it all, leading the opposition? Do you think that Mr. Mohammed would go to the House as the leader of the opposition, or he would assign another person?
I think he has to.
And if he doesn't, why he has to, but if he doesn't, answer the two.
Well, again, with respect to his team, the people came out for him, the people voted for him, the people believe in him, the people have a lot of expectations for him, from him, and of him. If he were to send me or you, whomever in his team, okay, you're going to be the face of you're the leader of the opposition officially. That's not going to come over right. In other words, you don't have enough confidence in yourself to stand up and be the man in the moment. And that you can't recover from. Because I can hear, quite rightly, Dr. Jackney saying, oh, the people vote for you and right away they see what I get. Mm-hmm. He duck and he put somebody else there. But he cannot, he has to come up and take this mantle of leader of opposition. If he doesn't, it's to his discredit.
And they probably would lose momentum.
They'll lose momentum, and the people will say, wait, man, you start off on the wrong foot already. I put me thing in you and you, I put me X in against you name and you, that's what you doing. It's you I put me put no proxy. And so that is what it comes down to. He really has got to I think it's a non-question. It's a non-decision. The people voted for me, I got to go up.
While we're still on, I know we dealt with the PNC before, but since we're talking about Parliament, do you think Mr. Norton should return to the House?
I think, and again, before everybody, I look straight into the cameras. I don't believe, my belief system, my training from home does not allow me to beat a man or kick a man when he's down. I think Mr. Norton should resign. Mm-hmm. I think he should do the gracious thing. I think he should do the honorable thing, the only thing that is available to him. And I have tried, and for whatever reason I didn't do as well. Therefore I must make way for somebody who can pick up the pieces. And the longer I delay that, the more difficult I make that person's... The PNC base is in need of a tremendous amount of inspiration right now. The longer Mr. Norton sticks around, the more he undermines that.
And one other thing before we move to Amanza and the AFC and ALP, you said something about Mr. Jackney. I think it was during his last press conference. He said that he was willing to work with APNU over a win. Do you think that they should take that offer up to say, you know what, when we get to the House, of course the government has the majority, but if they make offers to us, we should accept?
The PNC would be on the horns of a dilemma, because it's always been talking about wanting to be at the table, wanting to be in the same room and as a part of the conversation. Now, if Mr. Jackney or Dr. Jackney were to do so, he's put them in a bind, because it's a lose-lose situation. They say yes, they'll never overcome that, PNC's PPP, and all of them is the same.
The line's floored.
Right, and here's the other part. And if they say no, there's Mr. Jackney on his horse. You see, they don't know what they want. All the time they're talking about inclusive and being a part of the mix, and as soon as I make so, I take the first step. And they slap me hand and say, get out of here. No, right? So I think if I've got to make the decision on behalf of the People's National Congress, I would say no. Thank you, but no thank you.
Okay. Now let's talk a bit about the Alliance to Change. Their performance...
disastrous, tragic, because they were the first, if I may, they were really not the first, but Mr. Raphael Trotman, who I know well or came to know well, and Mr. Ramjatan, who I didn't and still don't know at all. I don't think I've ever met him. They broke ranks and at great personal cost, great political cost, and went and formed the AFC, which was groundbreaking.
And they did well
And they did well.
In 2011, they got 7 seats. That's the last increase in the number from 2006.
Yeah, and these are things that I used to read in the papers because I wasn't here as yet. But now that I'm here, and that kind of rings in the head, for it to be where it's at today, it's a sad thing.
So in the lead up of course, there was a big debate as to whether they go with APNU. go as a grand coalition, or they do it alone? They went alone. Do you think they should have stick with the coalition?
Look, there is madness and then there's utter madness. Or there's insanity and then there's total insanity. And I think the decision by the AFC can only qualify as complete madness. Where are your votes going to come from? Where is your appeal based on the run-up, lead up to the elections of 2025? You had none. And it showed. And I thought that coalescing with the APNU, PNC would have given, it had this precious piece to it, that coalescing indicated to the support bases such as they are of both parties that these guys know what they're about and they are serious about competing, and that together they could go over the edge. So you see all that, we haven't spoken about this at all. We're almost out of time. Low turnout.
Yes, definitely.
Low turnout. How am I going to come out and vote for people for the AFC, which I know you're not going to do anything? And why am I going to come out and vote for the PNC as a supporter when I figure out already that your chances have been reduced considerably? And so voters can be fickle, but they were also practical in saying, you guys are going to get steamrolled here. And that's exactly what happened. And that's even without discounting win. That's discounting win. Just by yourself. You did not gear yourself up and equip yourself properly and give yourself all the assets that you had to give yourself the best fighting chance, the best chance of emerging victorious.
Now, unlike the AFC, Forward Guyana movement led by attorney at law and former member of parliament Amanza Walton-Desir, despite contesting only the elections in only 7 of the electoral districts. Now, she didn't contest, the party didn't contest in regions 8, 7, 8, and 9, managed to amass enough votes. And like I said before, this interview is being recorded at a time when GHK has not issued its official results. So forgive us for that. But based on what we're seeing is that she's likely, for Guyana movement, is likely to secure a seat in the National Assembly. Now, if she does that, that's big because for a party that is new, and the party was formed just before nominations day. So she managed to pull off a campaign and to rake in sufficient votes, although not contesting in all 10 electoral districts, to get enough votes. What are your thoughts on her and her performance, the party in general?
Well, you know, we've been talking a lot about, and I think the territory requires it, about how well the PPP did and how astonishingly well the WIN did. We've got to talk about Miss Walton-Desir and her performance. For her to come out of nowhere and snare a seat, and I hope she does. And all of this business that I have no clue how it operates. I hope she gets a seat because I want to see her in Parliament, because it gives her the launch pad from which to start from now to deal with 2030. I think she is the fresh face of politics in this country. I think she is appealing. I think she's smart. I think she's charismatic. And so far as I understand, she's untainted. I think all those are to her credit come 2030. Once she builds a team and starts working towards that vision from today. She don't worry about the inauguration and all of that. They will take care of themselves from today. She, in my mind, you're not going to like this, and a lot of people out there are not going to like this. She, in my mind, is the biggest winner in this year's election. You say, how so? Mathematically, numerically, but there's a spirituality here that I think is going to leverage itself all the way into the hearts of the people. If she plays her cards right and carries herself well, she can be this is Guyana. This is a possibility. So you're looking at the one hand at the allegation-riddled Asruddin Mohammed, and on the other hand, you're looking at somebody, I don't know her age, I don't think we should ask either, right? But she's young enough, very, very young. And you could be looking at that instead of we talking about dinosaurs and troglodytes, political troglodytes. We could be talking about, if Mr. Mohammed survives, sanctions and all of that, and PPP assaults. So you're going to have Win and Miss Desir and people of that age group who, look, our biggest demographic is our youth demographic. Yeah. So if they form the bulk of our eligible voters, think of what this could mean for people who have never voted before and who see somebody who will look like them instead of a ancient like me, right? So they see somebody who's close to their age, who identify with their hurts, their needs, their problems, right? She's the biggest winner in this year's election. In my book, it might sound strange, but I firmly believe that.
Okay. Now, another person, the sixth party in these elections is Assembly for Liberty and Prosperity, led by former Minister of Government, Simona Brooms. Now, Simona is somebody who people like generally, and I was speaking to someone and they were a bit surprised as to her performance, to say, they're surprised that she didn't get the kind of support they thought she would have gotten. What are some of the factors worked against her?
Well,
Do you think that she should have stayed with the PNC? Do you think that she should have worked along and helped build a coalition? She did it alone because she probably...
I think I don't know enough about her campaign. Certainly know her. Having interacted with her once or twice, and I thought that she had a grip on the mining community, a pretty strong grip there, and a pretty long history. So I was taken aback when she did so weakly. To your point, and I think has to do a lot with the money factor again. You couldn't outspend, you couldn't out-talk, and you couldn't out-present the PPP, and of course there was the win factor. Now, definitely I agree with you, or I align with that question where I say to you, she shouldn't have left the fold. Miss Brooms' faction, if I may say so, or people in the PNC mix, they're grassroots people, right? And so when she left the PNC and went there, she lost some of that grassroots essence at the wrong time. She had stayed, she would have pulled, I think, some of them and said, look, we're on a boat. We're going to go down with the boat. We're going to sail to the sunshine with the boat, or we're going to go down with it. And when she lost some credibility there. She lost a lot of credibility with the people that thought that she was PNC through and through. And that showed in the numbers.
Mm-hmm. Just to add some context to why at the time of this interview is going to be aired Sunday. And so at the time we're recording Saturday, and I'm only stating this because at the time of this interview, the official declarations by the Ghana Elections Commission, those declarations have not been declared as yet. Why? Because once those tabulations were concluded at the level of the returning officers in the 10 electoral districts, there were requests for recounts as provided by the laws of the country, the electoral laws, and so requests were granted to APNU. And so you had recounts being done for part of regions 4, District 4 for East Coast, and part of Region 5. Those recounts have been completed. However, following the conclusion of those tabulations and those recounts, the leader of the opposition, and I'm saying leader, but really and truly the presidential candidate for the APNU, requested a forensic audit of the elections, and he requested maybe the elections to be done over, annulment of the elections. Now, GCOM has responded. The elections chairman, Justice Claudette Singh, would have indicated that based on the country's constitution, if there is any challenge to the election, that must come via an election petition. And maybe in the future, I'll bring back Mr. Lall to talk about and to compare the conditions under which a national recount was requested and granted in 2020 and the conditions under which this forensic audit is now being requested and being refused by the chairman of GCOM. And this is a whole different conversation, but it's a conversation I think that we must have. And so in the future, I'll definitely ask Mr. Lall to come back to address those issues. But as it is right now, I'm assuming by the time this interview is aired, the results will be officially declared by the Guyana Elections Commission. Of course, based on the numbers and during the recounts, we haven't seen any major changes. And so President Irfaan Ali by now should have been declared president re-elected. So just to wrap up this interview, what are your expectations? How do we move forward as a country? Yes, thankfully, it's not as bad as 2020, not even close. But how do the parties move forward? What would be your advice to all political parties entering parliament? How do we ensure the better management of the country, that we bring down not only cost of living, but bring down crime? And that is always an issue. And how do we work together for the good of the nation?
Well, I've said it before in yesterday's Stabrook News, and I'm going to say it today again on this program Sunday. I think it's inevitable. We've got to say congratulations to the People's Progressive Party, and to win for how it did, and Miss Amanza, Walton-Desir for her seat, and APNU as little as it did. The elections, it's what happened before the elections, not so much on election day, but that's a third conversation. Now, I would appeal to President Ali and Vice President Jagdeo and Prime Minister Phillips that the lessons of 2020 to 2025 are not lost. Do not ignore the people. Do not attack people like me and others, the few others who say, time out. Look at this a different way. You're going about this the wrong way. If they continue down this harsh, discordant, impatient, angry God manner, it's not going to be to the detriment of it's not going to be to the benefit of this country. I have to stay a little longer with the PPP because it holds all the cards. It has a bigger majority. I don't know how many seats it's going to end up to be, but it's not one, and it's not two or three. And we saw how much it could have done with the one. It needs to, there's no jubilation here. Celebration, yes, I could understand. It needs to be muted, because I want to introduce a kind of a novel point. If you take the PNC votes, and the Win votes, and all the other votes, and all those Guyanese who stayed home, relative to the population or the eligible voting population, the PPP is a minority government, meaning that less people vote, more people are against it or away from it than who voted for it. Mm. Take that message, take that lesson, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Mr. Prime Minister, and let it percolate in the head, in the mind, and say, we need to do different and we need to do better for the Guyanese people. Listen to their cost of living cries. Split the budget differently between public infrastructure and people infrastructure. Then they call it social infrastructure. And here when people talk about cost of living and quality of life and crime, we've got a problem with the Ghana Police Force in terms of its operations and the quality and the credibility of its operations. Access to information. A lot of things were promised by the government. Let's have that. State media. Why are we talking about state media monopoly 5 years later? The EU gave us 26 recommendations. Why 5 years later are we hearing the international observer community talking about major reforms, not my words, major reforms necessary? To the PNC, I said, you've got a lot of soul searching to do in the high command. You've got to decide. I think, Mr. Norton, I respectfully say to you, sir, that you need to bow out. And the quicker you do that, the better. The PNC High Command needs to really figure out what it's all about. If it's for the interests of the Guyanese people or if it's for about itself. The win, folks, Mr. Mohammed, you've got your hands, you've got your game up. You've got to deliver. You've got to be you've got to reinvent yourself. You have got to have that team around you, the 18, 19 of you who are going to go in Parliament. And you've got to be politically astute. And I mean, that's going to take a while. These guys, I think only about 2 or 3 of them have had such experience. And so you can give the best value to the people who voted for you. To Ms. Desir, Walton-Desir, you have been a part of the political firmament for a while, so it's not new to you. What is new to you is that you're a Lone Ranger. She is a Lone Ranger now with 1 seat. And however that those alignments work, PNC win, they're still way short of the PPP majority. But I think she can be that breath of fresh air in the parliamentary proceedings, in our deliberations. And together, I think PPP, PNC win Miss Walton-Desir and whomever else is there. They need to give the Guyanese people a sense that we all belong, a sense that we are all a part of the beautiful statistics that we've been hearing about, and a belief that our turn has arrived. And our turn is not a party turn. It's not a community turn. It's the Guyanese people turn.
Mr. Lall, thank you so much for joining me today on Sources and for sharing your views on the 2025 elections. To you, our listeners, thank you for staying tuned. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Sources. For all your information and updates on the elections, be sure to join us tomorrow for a regular news bulletin where you'll get to hear more about the elections. And throughout the course of the day, you could follow us on the News Source page. So thank you again for joining us, and take care of yourself.